Margaret counted the tour group one final time at the cave exit. 12 hikers had entered, but now her finger landed on 13.
That's not possible. Count again.
She counted again, mouthing the numbers silently. 11, 12, and then one more, standing slightly apart, smiling.
Thank you, Margaret. Really great tour. I'll remember this one.
He knows my name. I've never seen him before in my life.
The stranger turned and walked toward the parking lot. Margaret grabbed her phone and took a photograph.
He isn't on the manifest. 12 names. I only checked in 12.
In the photo, his smile was wide and easy, but his eyes held a distant calm, as if he'd already forgotten the daylight.
Who are you, and how did you get here?
Margaret stood frozen at the cave entrance, phone in hand, as the darkness behind her seemed to exhale a cold, damp breath. Margaret had guided tours at Mammoth Cave National Park for 8 years. She knew every public route by heart. 426 miles of passages had been mapped so far. Geologists estimated the true extent was triple that. Veteran guides had a phrase: "The cave is bigger than the map." They meant it.
Every tour starts with a head count. It's the first thing they drill into you.
The older rangers had a single rule: if a count didn't match, someone was lost. No one ever considered the opposite.
12 in, 12 out. It had never failed me, not once.
She'd counted dozens of tours over the years, marking each head on a clipboard, checking the manifest twice. The cave took people sometimes. Hikers strayed off the path and disappeared, but disappearance was the danger they trained for.
The idea that the count could go up instead of down, that was never part of the training.
The counting protocol was absolute. A discrepancy meant a search for a missing person, never for an extra one. 2 summers ago, a hiker vanished near Gothic Avenue. The count came up one short. Rangers searched for 6 hours. They found him dehydrated in an unmapped side passage, just off the tour route.
Every drill was about someone getting lost. We never even whispered about the opposite.
In every briefing, the rule was absolute. A wrong number meant someone was still inside.
The math was always subtraction. You started with a manifest, and you ended with either the same number or a rescue.
Search teams mobilized by radio crackle. Every ranger knew the call: 1 short at the exit. Repeat, 1 short. Then the entrance was sealed, and no one left until that hiker was found, alive or dead.
In 8 years, the count had only ever been wrong because someone wandered off.
The concept of an extra person emerging from the cave's dark throat had no place in their procedure. The cave was a place of subtraction, until the day it wasn't. Frank had worked at the park for 31 years. His office was a museum of mismatched maps and old radio equipment.
You still counting twice, Margaret? That's what separates us from the tourists.
Every time. Frank, 12 in, 12 out, just like you taught me.
Frank nodded. He'd trained most of the guides in the Eastern District, and he trusted Margaret's counts absolutely.
Good. The cave's got its own arithmetic, but numbers don't lie, unless the cave decides otherwise.
There it was again, that old-timer talk about the cave giving things back.
She'd heard the rumors. Retired guides claiming they'd counted extra hikers on cold autumn afternoons.
You count them in, you count them out. Everything else is just folklore, Margaret.
And you don't believe any of it?
Frank turned to the window, his face unreadable. "I believe the cave is bigger than the map," he said quietly. That's enough. On the 17th of August, 2024, Mammoth Cave drew another full tour. Margaret checked her clipboard with practiced fingers.
12. The manifest held exactly 12 names, and 12 faces looked back.
She marked them in, one by one, before the dark mouth of the cave swallowed them. The wooden sign read, "Frozen Niagara, a safe route, a family favorite." Inside, the temperature dropped, and the world became limestone and shadow.
Stay close, everyone. No wandering off the path. The cave's beautiful, but it's not a playground.
Tourists angled their phones at the flowstone, marveling at nature's slow artistry. Margaret recited the tour script from memory, but her mind drifted to Frank's odd words that morning.
The cave gives things back. What a strange thing to say.
She shook off the thought and led the group deeper. Where the path narrowed and the lights grew fewer, they moved deeper, past formations that had grown for millennia. The air smelled of wet stone and time.
About 10 million years old. The cave is still growing, inch by inch.
Her answers came automatically, but her mind kept circling back to a single, stubborn thought.
Something in the air felt different today. Thicker.
The group entered a massive chamber where the ceiling vanished into blackness. The tourists fell silent, awed. In that silence, Margaret sensed a pressure, not quite a sound, like the cave was holding its breath. She glanced back at the line of hikers, counting automatically. 12, just as it should be.
But my neck prickles. The air feels too still, as if something unseen is listening.
She forced herself to continue, reciting facts about flowstone and erosion. Her voice sounded louder than it should. The cave offered no answers. It simply stood, ancient and patient, waiting. The path narrowed to a jagged corridor, forcing the group into a single-file line. The darkness pressed in.
In 1943, a guide named Ellison vanished while mapping new passages. They never found him.
He'd been tracing a fissure deeper than any map showed. One day he crawled in, and the cave never let him go. A tourist aimed his flashlight into a side crevice, asking if the missing guide was still down there.
They never recovered a body. In these caves, some people just stay.
The tourists flicked their lights into the blackness, as if expecting a face to appear.
I shouldn't have told that story today. Not with the way the air feels.
Her own flashlight flickered. The beam cut out for a full second, then returned.
Steady. Don't let them see. You are spooked.
The group moved on, but the quiet was deeper now, and every drip of water sounded like a footstep. The distant glow of the exit grew brighter, pulling the group forward like a tide toward the surface.
Almost out. Count them, Margaret. Just routine.
She positioned herself beside the exit, and the faces filed past her, lit by the dying sun.
10, 11, 12.
She expected the count to stop at 12. It always stopped at 12, but it didn't. One more figure stood among the group, slightly apart, a man in his 40s with a quiet, patient smile. His eyes were calm and knowing, as if he had all the time in the world and no reason to hurry.
I don't know him. He's not on the list. Where did he come from? This is wrong.
Margaret's hand froze on the clipboard. The other tourists didn't react, as if he'd been there all along, a ghost among them. The man smiled a little wider, waiting patiently as the daylight poured over them all. The man stepped forward and extended his hand. The other tourists were already peeling away, eager for restrooms and cold water.
I should know him. I should recognize his face. But I don't.
He thanked her by name, his voice calm and grateful, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other in a long time.
He said my name, Margaret, clear as day. How?
He released her hand and stepped back. The other tourists were already gone, swallowed by the parking lot.
12 names. I checked 12. The manifest doesn't lie.
She fumbled with the clipboard, tracing each name with a finger. Janet, Mark, the Chen family, Tom, Lisa. 12. Only 12. The man turned and began walking toward the parking lot. With shaking hands, Margaret raised her phone and took a photograph. His boots crunched on the gravel. He didn't look back. He didn't hurry. Margaret stood frozen, phone clutched in her grip, while the cave behind her exhaled its cold, damp breath into the afternoon heat. Margaret forced her legs to move, carrying her across the parking lot toward the visitor center.
What am I even going to say? I counted wrong? Number, I didn't, but that sounds insane.
The building was quiet in the late afternoon. She could hear the distant hum of a floor fan. She stopped outside Frank's office, her knuckles resting on the doorframe. Her mind replayed the stranger's smile.
If I don't tell someone, that man just disappears. But if I do, I might lose my credibility.
She knocked twice, the sound sharp in the still air.
It's open.
Margaret pushed the door open and stepped into the familiar clutter of maps and old radios.
He's seen everything. If anyone will believe this, it's him.
She stood before his desk, phone in hand, the photo of the smiling stranger still burning on the screen. Frank looked up from his paperwork and waited, his eyes sharp and patient.
Something happened on the frozen Niagara tour. My count was off.
Off how? Someone wander off?
Number. I had 12 at entrance. At exit, I counted 13. I checked twice.
Frank set down his pen with a deliberate click. The silence that followed felt louder than the cave's deepest chambers.
13. You are sure?
He shook my hand. He thanked me by name. I took a photo.
She held the phone toward him, her hand trembling just enough to blur the edges. Frank studied the image. His face went very still. Then, without a word, he pulled open the top drawer and removed a worn manila folder. The folder was marked in black marker. "Do not file." He set it on the desk between them like a verdict. Frank opened the folder with the care of a man, handling evidence, and the first photograph slid onto the desk. It showed a woman in a dated dress, standing at the cave exit, her smile too wide for the year 1971.
17 photographs. Some date back before you were born.
He spread them across the desk like a deck of cards, each one a different face, a different decade. Margaret's eyes darted from one to the next. A young man in an orange vest, a woman with a baby, an old couple, all smiling.
None of them are on file as park employees, contractors, or visitors. Where do they come from? This has happened 17 times? How is this possible?
The cave returns people, Margaret. Not ghosts. Living, smiling people.
She counted the photographs automatically, her professional training overriding her shock. 17. Not one face was familiar. They were strangers, each and every one, and they all looked so happy to be out. Frank leaned forward, the lamplight deepening the lines on his face. The maps on his wall suddenly looked like guesses.
The maps are wrong. The cave goes places we can't follow, and it doesn't follow our rules.
He pulled out a yellow journal, spidery handwriting from the 1800s. Entered a passage not on any map, it read. Heard voices from the deep.
Voices from the deep? What does that mean?
We think the still pool in the cathedral chamber isn't water. It's a boundary, a mirror between here and somewhere else.
Frank's hand rested on an old embossed book titled Mammoth Cave, The Unexplored Depths. Dust motes swirled in the lamplight.
The people in these photos, they came back through that boundary. They're not ghosts, they're alive.
Alive. The word didn't process. She had shaken a hand that might have touched somewhere beyond this world.
The room felt colder, as if the cave's breath had reached up through the floorboards to listen. Frank closed the journal and looked at Margaret with eyes that had carried this secret for decades. He slid a typed note from the folder. August 1973, Gothic Avenue, 14 in, 15 out. Extra man emerged, smiled, thanked the guide by name.
The same pattern every time. They appear at the exit. They know the guide's name. They're polite.
Not one of them has ever caused trouble. Every single one says they were happy to be out.
She flipped to another note, typewritten, dated 1988. He said he was home. Shook my hand for a full minute.
Home. The word keeps coming up. Home to the surface or home to the cave.
We think they come from somewhere in the cave's depths. And when they step out, they feel like they finally returned.
The thin sheets crackled as she turned them. 1995, 11 in, 12 out. Woman mid-20s. She said the caves were colder than she remembered.
She remembered. So they're not new to the cave. They lived there.
The word home appeared again and again, typed on the back of photographs, scrawled in margins, always in the same curious tone. Margaret set the notes down, a terrible curiosity replacing her fear. She had to know more, even if the answer was something she couldn't unlearn. Frank slid the folder back toward himself and closed it with a soft, final sound.
You don't look for them, Margaret. They find you. That's how it works.
But why hasn't this been stopped? Why not tell the public?
Because then they'd stop counting. And we need the counts. Every number matters when someone's really missing.
He tapped the folder. 17 times since 71, and not one of those people ever returned or caused harm.
So we accept it. Let smiling strangers walk out of the dark and never ask questions.
Frank walked to the window and looked toward the cave entrance. The cave is older than maps, older than rules. We only watch.
Keep guiding your tours. Keep counting. One day, the cave will give you another one.
The weight of the file's silence pressed on her tongue. She had 100 questions, but Frank's face said they wouldn't be answered tonight.
I'll carry this, but I won't forget.
Margaret's home was silent, except for the hum of an old refrigerator. The weight of the folder followed her in.
Frank's words keep replaying. The cave gives you another one. What if I don't want another one?
The old habit took over. When stress gnawed at her, she turned to the family albums, to faces that made sense. She flipped past birthdays and holidays, then paused on a photo of her grandfather, Stephen, taken in 1976.
He disappeared on a hiking trip before I was born. I grew up with his absence, not his face. Why does this photo feel different tonight?
Stephen smiled at the camera, leaning on a walking stick, a forested hill behind him. He looked ready for an adventure that never ended.
The shape of his jaw, the way he holds his head. Something tugs at my memory, but I can't place it.
She carefully pulled the photo from its protective sleeve and held it under the lamplight, searching his face.
It's just an old family photo, but my heart is racing, as if he's looking back at me from somewhere not in the album.
She stared at Stephen's smile, a flicker of wrongness blooming in her chest, though she couldn't yet say why. Margaret picked up her phone and woke the screen. The photo of the smiling stranger still glowed there, patient as ever.
Not the same man as today's extra hiker, but something about the shape of the eyes, the file. That 1988 photo, the man had the same gentle jawline, the same tilt of the head.
She opened her laptop and typed into the search bar, Stephen Anderson disappearance, Mammoth Cave, 1976. The screen filled with a digitized newspaper clipping. Local man vanishes in Mammoth Cave area. The missing person poster from 1976 showed a smiling Stephen, the same kind eyes, the same patient smile as the man in the file.
He disappeared right here, in the Mammoth Cave backcountry. And 12 years later, someone who looked exactly like him walked out.
The kitchen felt smaller, the lamplight too bright. The cave had reached into her family album and left its mark.
I have to go back to Frank at first light. He needs to see this.
She placed the two photos side by side on the table, the resemblance a silent accusation that wouldn't let her sleep. The next morning, Margaret walked straight to Frank's office, a worn photograph in one hand and a printed missing poster in the other. Frank looked up from his coffee as she entered, and the door clicked shut behind her. She placed the two photos on his desk, side by side. One was the 1988 extra hiker from the file. The other was Stephen, her grandfather.
Where did you get this? This man in the file. Who is this?
That's my grandfather, Stephen Anderson. He vanished in 1976, hiking in the backcountry.
Frank adjusted his glasses and leaned over the photos. The face in the 1988 image was identical. The same hooded eyes, the same half smile, not just a resemblance, but a perfect match.
I've stared at this file photo for years. I never made the connection. He's the same man.
Margaret's hand trembled as she touched the 1988 photo. The date on the back read the 14th of August. The same day, years apart, her grandfather had walked back into the light.
The cave took him in 76, and it gave him back in 88. He's one of them.
The evidence lay between them, like a bridge across decades. Margaret was not just a guide, she was part of the cave's story now, connected by blood to the smiling strangers. Frank pulled a small notepad from his desk. He jotted the two dates, 1976 and 1988.
12 years. He should have aged, but that man in the photo looks exactly the same.
His missing person report said he was 52. This photo shows a man who looks 52, not 64.
So either he didn't age, or he never left the cave's time.
The silence in the office felt like the deep cave, where time didn't move the same way.
The cave doesn't follow our rules. It hasn't for a century and a half.
He's been in there all this time, or somewhere else, and the cave just held him.
The 1988 photo lay on the desk, a frozen moment of a man who had skipped 12 years of sunrises.
Every person in that folder has the same riddle. They don't age, or they come from a place where aging doesn't happen.
Then my grandfather might still be out there somewhere, looking just like this, and I'll never know. For decades, my family believed he'd fallen into a sinkhole. We held a memorial with no body.
Frank listened, his hands folded on the worn manila folder. The office was heavy with decades of unspoken grief.
Maybe he did move on, Margaret, just not in the way any of us thought.
He didn't die. He went somewhere, and the cave brought him back for a moment.
She asked Frank if she could keep the photograph. He nodded slowly, pushing it toward her. Margaret took the 1988 file photo and her grandfather's snapshot, holding them together like a family reunion. Then, with a steady hand, she wrote on the back of Stephen's photo in pencil, "Returned, the 14th of August, 1988, and slid it into the folder. The file now held 18 faces. Her family's secret was sealed among the others, documented but unexplained. Frank closed the folder. Outside the window, the cave entrance was just a dark line against the morning forest. The world continued as if nothing had happened. Only 2 people in that room knew that the dead sometimes walk out smiling. Weeks passed. Margaret led 47 more tours. Each one counted with the same precision.
12 in, 12 out. But now I look at faces differently.
At the entrance, she counted the same careful way, but her eyes lingered a beat longer on each face, searching for a smile that didn't belong.
Any one of them could be from somewhere else. Just smile. Count. Don't let them see you notice.
The tours continued, through the familiar dark. She sometimes caught herself staring into a side passage, listening.
Grandfather walked these same paths, or paths we don't know. One day, maybe I'll walk them too.
A young tourist asked if she'd ever found anything weird in the cave.
Nothing you'd believe, she said, with a quiet smile.
She turned back to the darkness, her flashlight steady on the ancient limestone. The count at exit would come. For now, she guided, and the cave kept its secrets. One night, after the last tour had gone home, Margaret stood alone at the cave entrance. The forest was silent. She faced the black mouth of the cave and felt the chill air press against her skin like an inhale held too long.
Something is in there. Not hostile, just present. Waiting.
The darkness gave nothing back. No face, no voice, just the eternal drip of water in the deep.
I know you are there.
Only silence answered. A silence that felt old and patient, like the cave had all the time in the world. Margaret stood for a long minute, then turned and walked away. Her footsteps crunched on gravel, growing faint. A single flashlight beam cut the path ahead, but the darkness behind her didn't retreat. It simply waited. The camera held on the cave entrance, a black mouth consuming the frame. The stars were out, but no light to touch the void. Mammoth Cave, 426 miles mapped, and one tunnel doesn't end. It never has.